Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where our real superpower is time travel, delivering tomorrow's solutions today, faster than you can say DeLorean. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. Help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Did you know that companies with aligned sales and marketing teams see a 38% higher sales win rate? If your teams are siloed, you could be leaving big wins on the table. Sales and marketing should be the ultimate power duo, like Batman and Robin, Laurel and Hardy, if you're a little older, maybe, Snoopy and Charlie. But they often operate in silos, missing opportunities and wasting resources. And today we'll talk about how to seamlessly align these true critical functions to drive greater success for your business. You ready to break down the walls? For many businesses, sales and marketing are seen as two distinct processes. Marketing generates leads and sales closes them, right? End of story. But in reality, the disconnect between these two teams can create significant inefficiencies, lost leads. Ever had that happen? What happened to that lead? Oh, I don't know. I didn't get it. And then, of course, missed revenue targets. Whose fault is that? Sales goes, it's marketing. You give us crap leads. And marketing goes, sales doesn't work the leads we give them. Kind of sucks. But marketing, who knows that maybe they are targeting the wrong audience or generating leads that sales teams don't know how to handle. On the other hand, sales may be missing key messaging and insights from marketing that could help close deals faster. And the result, friction, underperformance, and a bunch of finger pointing. Kind of, that's not good, right? So, how do we break down these silos and get sales and marketing working hand in hand? Let's explore three key strategies that can align your sales and marketing teams, creating a seamless flow that amplifies the results for both, and none of this finger pointing stuff. The first one is shared goals and KPIs. One of the very first steps toward alignment is setting common goals for both teams. Of course, they will still have their own individual goals, but we're talking about some common goals for both. So instead of marketing just being measured on leads and sales and being measured on closed deals, set shared KPIs like revenue targets, pipeline growth. That's a really big one. Pipeline coverage, huge. Conversion rates. This encourages both teams to work together toward the same outcome instead of competing over who's doing their part and who's sucking wind. The second is unified messaging and content strategy. Consistent messaging is critical for ensuring smooth handoff from marketing to sales. Marketing should provide content and insights that sales can use at different stages of the buyer journey, whether it's content for lead nurturing or specific case studies to close deals. A unified strategy that ensures prospects get the same story and value proposition no matter who they're talking to. That makes the entire process feel seamless. You ever had the situation where you ask sales, are you using this marketing piece? I'm like, no, nobody cares about that. It doesn't address the right things. Marketing doesn't get it because they've built all this stuff kind of in a silo. Or, sales is kind of doing their own thing. They're rolling their own marketing message, and marketing is going, why are you saying that? That's not right. And so it's getting that message right so that process does feel seamless. We're all telling the same story, singing off the same sheet of music, whatever analogy you want to use. The third one is cross-department communication. And the communication between sales and marketing can't just be occasional check-ins, once a month, once a week, once a year. But there's got to be, regular meetings, shared dashboards, and feedback loops where both teams can learn from each other. What's really going on? How are the leads working out? What's going on with the close rates and giving some feedback. So marketing needs to know, what's the quality of the leads? What's happening with those? Sales needs to know what's going on with marketing. What are the campaigns that are in? What's the messaging going on right now? What are the current promotions? How about that? Sales has to provide that feedback and marketing has to share data on what's resonating with prospects. What is it people are clicking on? What's working right now? And this real time exchange helps both of those refine lead generation and closing strategies. I've had a lot of conversations with superstar RevOps leaders over the last couple of months, and I've heard a simple shift that kind of unites all three of these strategies. And it's something that very few companies are doing, and that is having SDRs report to marketing instead of sales. And when I first heard that, I was like, sales is where they belong, right? I mean, they're outreach, they're pre-sales, discovery calls, qualifying. And they're like, yeah, you mean creating MQLs or turning MQLs and SQLs? Is like, yeah, I guess so. But SDRs, they're on the front lines generating leads. They're calling outbound. They're reaching out to the inbound leads that came in. I mean, who better to help close the loop with marketing about the questions that are asked? What's going on those calls? What's the perceived value? And then providing a higher quality handoff to sales because they can pass that information along as well. So it really informs both so that, hey, here's what we talked about in the initial call, and here's what they're interested in, and passing that on to sales. But probably 90% of the companies out there don't do this. They're still, SDRs are in the sales silo. But aligning your sales and marketing teams isn't just about improving communication, it's about creating a cohesive strategy that drives both lead generation and deal closure. It's got to be both. Shared goals, unified messaging, regular communication are certainly the keys to achieving that. Our founder on Tuesday was Renan DeVille, serial entrepreneur and founder of OSS Ventures, where he helps manufacturers digitize their production sites. We talked about non obvious opportunities, where to find them, problem validation, profitability, and social responsibility, and of course, AI decision making. And our expert guest last week was Anthony Nitsos, fractional CFO. We talked about what makes companies more valuable, metrics, and things founders miss that cost them big and create frustration. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Jacco van der Kooij, an internationally acclaimed business leader and founder of Winning by Design. Jacco is known for transforming SaaS sales strategies for companies like Amazon, AT&T, Disney. With 8 best-selling books on revenue growth and sales leadership under his belt, including Revenue Architecture and Blueprints for a SaaS Sales Organization. Jacco is a sought-after sales mentor for venture capital firms and a keynote speaker at top global conferences. You've probably seen him out. Get ready to dive deep into the world of SaaS growth and high-performing sales teams with one of the industry's leading experts, Jacco van der Kooij. Hey, Jacco, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thank you for having me. It is an absolute pleasure and a treat to be here. Tell me, what do we got on store today? What do we got cooking?
We're going to talk all about go-to-market and revenue, turning company into a revenue factory. Sound pretty good?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And I understand that you tackle that group, right? If I understand that you work a lot with founders from 1 to 10 and 10 to 100-ish.
Yes. Absolutely. And you do as
Tell
well.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that group. What is the 10 to 100 group? What are they struggling with every day right now? When you run that mastermind, bring all those people together. What is the word on the street? Educate me. Tell me. Share it with the audience.
Well, so some big challenges. One is leading teams as you continue to build and keeping that corporate DNA, the DNA you really wanted to have as a startup, keeping that once you're managing through, 1, 2, 3 layers of people. That's a really big one. Strategically, technology is moving so fast right now. What do they need to be focusing on? Because there's so many things we could do. And so it's really figuring out what really matters. And of course, keeping the revenue going and continuing to grow. Because as those revenue numbers get bigger, if you want to keep that magic ratio of 40%, that gets harder and harder. So it's really coming up with some unique ways to keep that revenue engine growing and keep it going. So you keep feeding the revenue engine so your growth rate stays high.
Okay, so like we're talking about culture, we're talking about AI, and we're talking about growth. Those are the 3 things then, right? Yeah. Yes.
You got it.
Yes. Oh, they are fun topics to talk about. Tell me, how can I help today? What wisdom can I part upon you? What lies can I spin? What like
Well, let's talk about go-to-market. CEO, go-to-market leader. What are some things that they really need to think about and put in place in order to get that go-to-market team to operate efficiently like a revenue factory?
Okay, I'll give you some analysis that we've done. Over the past 3-4 weeks, we have analyzed 72 public companies. In those 72 public companies, we looked at their performance. We measured their net new ARR and how much they spend on marketing and sales. So mindset here is simplistically thinking. And I know I oversimplified, so like don't hate me in the comments on this topic, right? It's like we simply look at marketing and sales cost and we say how much net new revenue generates. That creates what we call a GTM efficiency factor. That factor tells us how much, right? Now, historically, we believe that companies with SaaS, with recurring revenue, you should spend about $1 in marketing and sales to acquire about $1 in net new revenue, right? There are about 7 or 8 companies that are well below that 100 mark. And I name a few: Atlassian, Datadog, CrowdStrike. Sure. CrowdStrike is right around $1. Palantir has brought it down, but these are the public. ServiceNow is close to it. Klaviyo, who just came out, they're all like right around that $1-ish, $1.20, $1.50 or something. And they are trending around that. So in other words, quarter over quarter, they're not making a significant change. And then there's a group that sits between about $1 and $2. And, like those companies, have a tendency to trend up. They're not trending away towards $1. They're trending away from $1. Now, that group has a lion's share, and that has about like 20 companies. And then there's 41 companies who are trending badly and who are completely spinning out of control. That means every month, every quarter when we look at it, their marketing and sales cost keeps going up. However, their net new ARR is going down. Those companies are in trouble. Yeah. And that is now what we believe 41 out of the 72 companies that we analyzed. We took data from David Spitz. And what the answer to your question is, what is the number one GTM issue? You're spending too much money and most likely on acquiring the wrong leads, or your TAM is an absolute mess, right? And companies don't want to come to that realization, particularly when you're at $70, $80 million, because you think to yourself, what I got so far. Yeah. But
right.
If you have capitalized or if you have monetized your company based on the funding that you're going to reach $2 billion, that's the problem, right? And that is right. What we're trying to help companies with these.
That's a really big thing. And acquisition costs, and you have diminishing returns. And is that because marketing channels wear out, or they don't have enough of them, or is it fatigue, or is it kind of the overall market or saturation?
No, it's a simple one. If you sell to vertical markets, if you're selling your IDEX and you're selling to veterinarians didn't get hurt with any economy. Veterinarians are still doing fine.
Sure.
But if you're a SaaS
company,
yeah, they were doing what they're doing. But if you're a SaaS company and you're selling to other SaaS companies, then those SaaS companies have stopped buying about 18 months ago, right? And those retention programs you put in place at the end of 2022, 23 are now coming to roost on you, right? Those chickens are coming home at this point in time. And so we now see that NRR is where these folks get hit right now. Now, I predicted that this would happen. It's not like, brilliance or of intelligence or like high IQ thinking. Yeah, this simply is, you could see this coming at the start of 2022 when I wrote a paper on this topic, which was called the sweet spot in the eye of the storm. I predicted that this would eventually happen, and it has now happened. I can also tell you what's going to happen next, by the way, but maybe we'll wait for that.
Sure. And so is it really becoming a churn problem, and that's what's really affecting net revenue, or is it downgrades, or what do they do to stop that?
So churn. What is the American saying? That the rag with the gasoline on it. What is that? Help me out here. What's that saying? When you amplify something, you throw a rag with gasoline on the fire or something like that, right?
Oh,
like
okay.
Oil on the fire.
Sure. Yeah, oil on the fire or gasoline on the fire. Yeah. Sure.
And so what we are seeing right now, and this is unfortunate, but the NRR is essentially is the straw that is breaking many companies back, and for the following reason. NRR's growth is hard to replenish with acquisition, and acquisition was already in problematic issues or in a tough situation, and now the NRR is kicking in. So we're seeing for large names that you're very familiar with, products that we all use in SaaS, those are now having an NRR below 100%. And that means that the GRR has dropped from the 94, 95% to the low 80s. And for some well-known companies, we're talking about 70, high 70s kind of percent.
Wow.
That level is hard to supplant, right? That means that the glide is no longer a glide. It is a control. It's still it is a descent, but it's descending into and like that's hard to supplant, right?
It is.
And
It's really expensive too, to try and replace NRR. That you really have that tailwind to trying to add net new revenue to replace it. Really, really expensive, and I think there's some market headwinds right now too.
That's right. And so now the market headwinds were there, I have to say, but we now see a bifurcation. And like I said, the when I gave you the numbers, out of 72, 41 are problematic, and I would say about 5 of them are in disastrous mode. We would see them spin out of control any point in time. 31, that means that the 31 are doing good, and of that 31, about 8, 9, 10 are doing really good. And the remaining 20 are recovering. I believe that signal reflects in the market. So when you say we're having headwinds, sure, there's a large group that has headwinds, and those companies that have headwinds, they overspend on go-to-market, do not control it, have adopted growth at all costs mindset as a culture throughout the company, right? Those 10 at the bottom, they now are starting to harvest, right? And so I believe that we see this back now. Give you an idea. In your bracket, we have about 270 companies over $100 million right now ramping up to go IPO. We have room for in the next 18 months, we have room for about 25. And if I add another year, I would say we have room for about 45 companies to go IPO to go through a monetization cycle like an IPO in the next 24 to 30 months.
Okay.
There's 280 going for that.
Wow.
Right?
What happens to the rest of them?
Well, you'll see some of them will go the route of Convoy, closed doors, thank you, but that will be a small percentage. Most of them will be acquired, some form. We're going to see a lot of more things like what happened with Drift. We're going to see a lot more things that happened with WalkMe, which is premature bailout, right? Not on the top, not at maximum, but take the money and run. Not run, that sounds too negative, but take the money off the table. That's a better way of saying it. It's we don't have to go to the bottom of the barrel. We don't have to get the maximum out of it. It is what it is, and let's take it what we got right now. So I mean that in the most respectful way. So we're going to see more of those, but you're going to see a lot of that. We see the the Tatango acquisition of Catalyst. These are all companies that are merging assets, and essentially what it's doing, you merge 2 companies together, you can drop marketing and sales costs, but you only need one of the marketing teams, or the aggregate HR team, aggregate operation team, right? And so you can drop costs relatively quick and combine the ARR and the net and the retention numbers together, right? So that's the plan for those companies.
And so what about the ones that are going to go public? You think those will go and be successful, or you think they're going to have the same kind of issues that you're seeing in the other 72 public companies that you're evaluating?
So first of all, we see the companies that are going public have a few trends. Number one, they're no longer measured at 100 to 200 revenue. They are $500 million and plus in revenue, right? And we're working with a company that has over $1 billion, well over $1 billion in revenue to help them go public. So we see, first trend is we see those companies going up on the upper end. Second, what you'll see is their metrics are way more under control. In general, those companies that are going to go public have a decent NRR. And I'm not saying like a GitLab NRR of 160, or something like that, right? I'm talking about a 107. In other words, like a 7 to 8% increase year over year on your existing customer base.
That's
those
healthy.
Things, that's nothing to shake your stick at, right? That's fantastic. Yeah. If you are able to sustain that through this economy. And then the third part that you're going to see, lots of these companies are going to public. they make money by selling to actual businesses like vertical, like lawyers and accountants and veterinarians. Like they sell their services into a vertical market of which the customer will continue to be there over the next decade.
That makes a lot of sense. So what is it that sets those 31 companies apart in their NRR? And what are their factors? What's the it factor in those companies, and particularly the ones that are still seeing healthy growth in NRR from the ones that don't?
Okay, so first and foremost, we don't know, we know the metrics. We don't know every one of those 31 companies. So I can't speak on behalf of the
Sure.
31. I think that what most of all of those companies have, they still have a growth and all cost mindset. All across the industry, we see that the growth at all cost mindset is still very prevalent and is very hard to unroot, because
It is.
up to the point that Winning by Design has, like we at Winning by Design have come up with an alternative called the Revenue Factory, but there's nothing else in the market like that, right? Like the growth at all costs has stopped working, and everybody looks at each other. Now what, right?
And now it's all cost and little growth.
Yeah. And so what sets those people apart is essentially, what it has always set apart. And I can hear the chuckle, the inbound chuckle. What has always saved our technology sales? Fantastic product. A fantastic product solves every problem in the world, right? Like people will slack to the bushes or whack with a machete to the bushes to get to a product that everybody wants.
Yeah.
So companies with top product will do that. Second thing, good total available market. So if you have a large market and you're one of the top 3 players in that, that's going to help you, right? And those two things are saving most of those 31 companies. You have a good vertical market, total available market, and you have a reasonable to fantastic product, right? And so try to see if I can pull up some of those names. So that generally, will do well. And let me see. Scroll. I'll give you some of the names of the 31, right? Freshwork, Lightspeed, PagerDuty, JFrog, Zscaler, Workday, Cloudflare, Sprout Social, and so on. Weave, AppFolio. So these are all like part of the 31 that are going to be quite fine, right? I think that there's a few that are actually showing some, some major progress that we say like, CyberArk. CyberArk looks fantastic from our perspective of the cost of marketing and sales right now. They're dropping their costs quarter over quarter, and they're trending now towards $1 spent for $1 net new.
That's really good.
By the way,
so what is the
am
future?
I overwhelming? You have to tell me, your audience, right? I don't know your audience that well. Is this the kind of stuff that you as an audience want to hear? Or you guide me, right? Tell me, Jacco, feel free to correct me if asking different questions.
No, this is very, very good. And I think if the audience can understand what it is that they can do, how do they apply this to their business, and think about how do they build a company that has that factor, the what you call the revenue factory. Is there a methodology or framework or tools or what is it that they can put in their hands, their go-to-market team, to bring that cost of acquisition more in line and where you have smart growth?
Okay. So this actually, I think, is a good the mindset is as follows. And when a company surpasses $10 million in ARR, whether it likes it or not, whether the founder wants it or not, whether the CEO believes in it or not, doesn't matter. Your factory has started to work. Your revenue company has started to work as a factory, a revenue factory. Now, that revenue factory, up to that point, most likely only uses 1 GTM motion, maybe 2 effectively. They may have like 5 more in the drawer that are not working, but there's 1 or 2 that are working.
Exactly.
Those GTM motions, we look at that as revenue production lines. And these revenue production lines can be measured through metrics. We call that the bow tie. We measure each the metric. Can be improved. Can be like, hey, we can do incremental improvement. Let's not overnight retool the entire, production line. Let's tweak things. And what you'll end up doing is, in order to grow revenue, very simple statement, do more of what works and stop doing what doesn't work. That means that you need to know your data. And most companies fall and stumble on in this particular mode at 20, 30, $40 million. Often the maniacal mindset on I need to grow revenue go so far that they essentially get off the bandwagon and they start rolling out multiple, like start to $5, $6, $7, $8 per revenue acquired, per dollar revenue, net new dollar revenue acquired, right? And that is, you can't recoup that, like a year later with some cool marketing campaign, right?
Right.
You're not going to go from 8 to 1, right? And by the time nowadays, what we see is when you get into those $100 to $250 million, you need to be running a relatively sustainable business, meaning you need to be in the range of $2 spent for $1 net new on marketing and $1 spent, $2 spent on marketing and sales, $1 net new. Now, quick point here, because people will say the dollar spent on marketing and sales, where does that come from? I didn't hear customer success. Folks, marketing applies to both acquisition and customers, and sales in the form of expansion also applies to both acquisition and, in this case, the customer success status of expansion. So I've simplified those terms now as marketing and sales, but essentially they go across the entire customer journey.
So if you have multiple go-to-market motions, and thinking about how you're doing that, you may have one that produces more leads that close a few, or the revenue or the size is different. You may have one that produces fewer leads, but they close higher, or the revenue, the average sale from that channel is higher. Is that what you're talking about? And really looking at figuring out the data and what's working and what isn't, is finding
Bingo.
the channels that really maximize that.
Bingo. Now, that doesn't mean. Now, think of a production line, right? You have one production line that's your cash cow. Like for some companies, that's their inbound motion. For other people, that's their enterprise field sales motion. For yet another one is their PLG motion, right? Their no touch, right? But that's your cash cow. Keep cashing your cow, so to speak, right? I'm like, now, that doesn't mean that your next GTM motion also needs to be equally productive. No, that may be in an earlier stage. So you may be investing in that a little bit more. You may actually use the profits from your cash cow and fund that, right? But when the time you say is like, hey, I got one cash cow, which we're not investing in, marketing ain't working on that because that's inbound. We're not doing anything. And I got 4 production lines, none of which are actually producing. And I'm spending all my marketing on that. And I'm hiring more enterprise salespeople to get that off the ground. It hasn't been working in the past 3 years. And we're slowly throwing this as a Hail Mary into the deep field as if this is the only thing that we can do. And most likely you're going to be in trouble, right? You're more than welcome to consult Winning by Design and pay us whatever, $60,000 in order to do that for you. That's the message that you're going to get out of that, right? Now, we do that with data and metrics driven, and we show you how you get that to that point of view, and it helps you. But the conclusion is the same. Stop doing what doesn't work, and do more of what works, which may include investing in one GTM motion that you think is the future direction of the company, but not 4, not 5.
We push that really, really hard, especially below 10 million, because you get really, fractured go-to-market. Is you're trying, 5 different things and none of them are working. And it's really finding that focus. Find one, get one working, and then add another one. And that's one of the things I think that keeps companies from getting to 10 to 20 is their focus is so scattered on so many different things, instead of finding that one thing that works and really getting it working, and that production line, like you were saying, getting that production line, getting that cash cow going, and then add another one.
Yeah. Too many cooks in the kitchen is what is the result of. So what happens is the following: is like, you're growing at 2 and 3, and you hire a new VP of sales, or or something like that, right? Hire some new executive on the team, and that executive says, hey, folks, I think we should go after this market, and we're going that, right? That lasts about 18 months is the average tenure right now. I believe it's 17, but and then we go okay, new person comes in and say okay, Jennifer, Johnny, Michael, whatever, was completely off his rocket, had no idea what he was doing. Let me point you in another direction, right? And then that person, whatever, Aniston, pick another name, Dan, and so on, they are 17 months, 18 months later. So we're now a 6-year-old company. We run at $7 to $8 million. I look at your GTM motions and I see the kitchen drawer, right? I see everything piled in there, tape, scissors, spatula, everything is in that, right? And I go okay, how can you cook with this, right? And so the solution is simple, and you probably want to know what the solution is.
Yes, what is the solution?
Okay. If I ask you, what is the fundamental piece of the HubSpot GTM motion? What is that? What do you think? When you think about HubSpot, what kind of GTM motion do you think of?
Hotspot GTM motion. I don't know.
HubSpot. My bad.
Oh,
So
HubSpot. HubSpot.
yeah.
Gotcha.
What is HubSpot known for?
Content.
Content, and they're generating inbound with it, right?
Yes.
Content.
Yeah. Oh, they're all about inbound. That is. They're so good at that.
Okay. Do they still do that today?
They're much more outbound. They've moved up market and they're doing a lot more with enterprise and field sales now.
Okay. Now, how much are they currently? Do you know? I do, but they're approximately $2 billion in revenue, right? Now, what you'll see is it took HubSpot. They didn't stop at $7 million doing inbound to say we need an outbound motion. They went over $1 billion before they start diversifying that, so to speak, right? Maybe a little bit less, but we're talking about at least they reached hundreds of millions of dollars in ARR with their inbound motion, right? Now, if I ask you Slack, what GTM motion do you think of when you think of Slack?
I think a lot of referrals, and it's really a grassroots thing where people are inviting other people into their Slack channels, and then they're getting subscriptions, and it's growing that way.
And many people would refer to that as PLG, right? But the elements of it you described, word of mouth, product popularity, right? So it's a full PLG motion, right? Now,
it is.
Now, and Slack does that still today, right? Like I don't know how far Slack is in these days in revenue, but it still does that very same thing.
Yes.
So here's the thing that what you'll see. When you have a successful product, it's a near match with the go-to-market function it has. So the product and the go-to-market function seem to be working hand in hand. In this case, HubSpot and inbound, Slack and PLG. And I could even go as far as that today, I would say 1/3 to half the customers who buy a Tesla actually buy a Tesla online. In other words, a self-driving car with a self-buying experience, right? Even that matches up in some weird way, right? And so
who would have ever thought you could sell a car, product-led growth, and it's all self-service online, and that is just mind-blowing.
And what you'll see, what that is, and that is the solution for your audience and for your customers and for your communities, is the following. Don't tinker around with 1 to 10 what your GTM motion is. You should know it. That's what got you to 1. That's what got you to 2.
Yeah.
You just got to do more of that, right? Like you can't, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that you can at 8 cannot start diversifying, probably at 8 to $9 million. But you got to reach that $10 million, which often is a marquee point of a significant amount of funding, right? You got to reach that with something that works. So by the time you get that money, you can use what works to amplify. If you have 3 GTM motions and you're at $9 million and none of them really works, and you're going to get a whole bunch of funding, you're going to go do you're going to spend it on 3, you're going to distribute it over 3 different GTM motions. The website with a PLG motion, you're going to hire enterprise rep, you're going to hire SDRs for you. You're going to do all that. It's like a kitchen drawer. Don't do that. But that's what most companies do because they're frantic for growth and they're not willing to bet on that, what took them to the dance at that point, right? And so that person that took them to the dance, which is the GTM motion that made them successful.
Yeah. So what happens when they have that GTM motion and then it stops working or it slows? So maybe it's product-led growth and they're running ads and then there's a big change in algorithms and now their ads are not bringing in those inbound leads anymore and PLG has dried up. How should they approach that? Should they continue focusing on that and try to get it working more, or should they pursue something different? What's your take?
Okay, so those who are listening who love to take notes, I want you to take the notes on the following thing. It works very simple. Your production line, let's say we have a PLG-driven production line. We call that a low-touch or a no-touch production line, right? Dependent on human involvement. Let's call it a no-touch production line right now. PLG, no-touch production line. That production line has inputs, leads that generates outputs, right? Inputs come in, generates outputs. Outputs is NRR, is a form of recurring revenue, ARR or MRR, depending on how you measure that. But in between, you also have performance conversion rates. We call that for the time being throughput, right? And the throughput performance means I can tweak things up. I can make things better. I can improve conversion rates. I can use more advanced automation techniques or more skilled sales professionals and so on and so forth. That will improve conversion rates. Now, we know that my leads converting to ARR goes through a huge immense of conversion rates, right? And they all build on top of each other. Bad leads lead to bad deals, leads to bad NRR, right?
Right.
So simply follow this. If you want to drive in this picture that I just built you, if you want to drive more output, more revenue, I got option number 1, drive more inputs. Option number 2, improve my throughput. Now, early on, when you go into a market with lots of leads, your throughput doesn't matter as much. What matters much is get as much input as you can get. That's the road up to $10 million. Then after that, you need to improve your throughput. Can I improve that? Now, the throughput has 3 specific areas how you can fix. Number 1, is it the right process? Are you executing? Can you cut pieces out of the process? Can you change the process? But process typically means, am I doing the right steps in the right order, right? Number 2 thing, I can say, can I improve some of these process actions with automation tools, AI, or can I make something better? And number 3, if there are skills that involve human beings, mostly in sales, that is, and customer success, can I skill the people up so they can do it better? That is your game from 10 to 50. Now, when you start improving and that revenue, that GTM motion start to now, first inputs start to decline, as you say, diminishing return. You now start, shoring that up. Up to that point, you probably have been very sloppy with your leads. You probably are you're a volume-driven company. Now you bring in processes, you establish playbooks for everybody, you increase the level of quality. Now you get to $18, $20 million. Meanwhile, you launch your second GTM motion. You've now learned from your first GTM motion and you learned your second GTM motion, which could be a different region, different product, different segment, could be a different way of selling, could be online versus in person, right? But you launch something new that is based on the results of the second. It takes you 1 GTM motion to get to 10. It takes you 3 GTM motions to get to 50.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, I'm talking a lot. Ask me more questions. Come on, probe me.
This is really, really good. And thinking about putting that together and how you think about it. I think that's really helpful. And thinking about what are the things that we should be thinking about in looking at that, the inputs, the outputs, the throughput. And so often, I think it's those inefficiencies. When money is flowing, when leads are easy to get, then that throughput, it gets really sloppy. And that's where we have to pay attention and really start refining. And so that we get that output that we're looking for, and even outsized output, by making sure that the throughput is working well.
That is right. And what you'll see, all this works on metrics at a point in time, right? If you're at $18 million in revenue, you should have enough metrics. Folks, many of you operate at $6, $7, $8 million already say, look, I got enough data. It's not that I don't have enough data. It is the quality of the data. Is it the right data?
Sure.
Do I have it structured correctly and stuff like that, right? Yeah, that we all need to clean up. But again, that's what companies like us can do for you. I'm not making this a Winning by Design commercial. I'm just saying hey, there's companies out there that can help you with that. Many people say, wouldn't my internal people know how to do that? Yes, they should, but most don't because there's no model for it. And so they are just look, if today you can say, hey, I'm hiring a doctor and the doctor should know how to operate on patients. Yes, you can do that today because I got a doctor's degree. I got a hospital. I can track record. The doctor has probably helped 1,000 customers like it before. But today you're looking for help. In our world of growth, there ain't no doctor's institute. There is no medical degree that you can get. We are operating on the sidewalk, yelling from one side of the street to the other side of the street. Cut that leg off, right? Like there is no structure for this. Now, mind you, I wrote a book on this topic, revenue architecture, that says, let us put the structure in, please, right? Let us put a simplified structure in that we can all work along. And then, I think we now have trained over 3,500 revenue architects on that have started to embrace that in different forms and shapes. And, they are now starting to build on that, what we call the bow tie. They start building on proper data structure. So we can run that like with David Spitz from Benchsides. We can now start comparing numbers and metrics.
Yeah. Are you ready to dominate your market and skyrocket revenue? Dive into Small Fish, Big Pond, building a world-class business that swims circles around competitors. This book is packed with powerful marketing and leadership insights guaranteed to transform your business and operate world class. Small Fish Big Pond delivers proven strategies to sharpen your marketing message, deliver unmatched value to your clients, and guide your prospects' buying journey to one inevitable conclusion: that your company is the only solution for them. Inside, you'll find step by step frameworks and time tested growth principles to attract your ideal clients, convert them, and turn them into your passionate brand ambassadors. Grab your copy today, print, ebook, or audio at smallfishbigpond.com or on Amazon. Plus, remember, every single book sale supports charity, so dive in and make a difference. Can you explain the concept of revenue architecture and how that is different from traditional sales strategies?
Sure. Revenue architecture simply is the concept as follows. You remember, obviously you all know the Golden Gate Bridge, the most known bridge in the world. I think it's the number one known bridge in the world. There's other equally or more beautiful looking bridges, but it's definitely one of the most well-known bridges.
Yes, right? Iconic for sure.
Right? And when you built that for the first time, that bridge was not, there was never built before. Such a large suspension bridge over such a big gap in such deep water, blah, 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 all the wind, the everything was never done before. So somebody built that bridge, they built it first time right, and it's lasting 100 years. Okay. How do they do that? That is because they work off models. Now the model, a model is, hey, look, the height of the span has to do with the thickness of the cable that the suspension bridge hangs off, right? And so they model it. The higher the span, the thicker the cable. And so they start calculating what will be the right height and so on and so forth. They run simulations on it and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But it's all based on models. Revenue architecture says we can model growth the same way a bridge has been built. It uses architectural style, design style principles and says like, hey, engineering style principles. And it says, look, there are 6 models that allow us to grow. The number one model is the revenue model. Are you charging people one-offs? Are you doing recurring? Are you using consumption, usage? Are you charging monthly, annually, and so on and so forth? Revenue model. Number 2 model is the data model. Funnel no longer works, should be a bow tie. Most of the revenue is acquired after the customer closes the first deal. So we need to have a model that covers that. Number 3 model is mathematics. Problematic for most people, but truly the understanding of how your machine works mathematically is a key requirement today. Number 4 model is operating model. How do I combine multiple GTM functions? Number 5 model is the growth model. Where am I on the growth curve? My machine operates differently at 8 million versus 8 million versus 800 million. These are 3 different stages. They operate differently. And the last model is where we as human beings communicate with day in, day out, where the other 5 are relatively like paper model. The 6th one is the go-to-market model. This is really where we operate with every day, where, like we say, it's an inbound motion, an outbound. We target, we use an SDR, or we're using an enterprise. We use sales engineers, or we use PLG. That is the GTM model. All those combined 6 models allow us to mimic a business and to run models off that and prepare our customers for where growth is going to go.
That's really smart. And thinking about that and breaking it down into those different segments and getting one right. Is there a specific order that you recommend? And really, where do you start? If nobody has a model today, where should they start? What's the first model they should be looking at implementing?
Yeah, that's right. So the models have hierarchy to them. And
yes, I would think so.
Right. And so the revenue model is where it all starts, because everything in your business depends. Am I going to run a subscription business? Am I going to run a consumption business, or I'm going to run an ownership business, right? Ownership is I buy the car, subscription is I lease the car, and usage is, okay, I'm going to take an Uber, right?
Sure.
Those models as the defining everything else on top of that, the math, the data model, everything changes based on that. But once I figured that model out, I put the data model on it. Now I know, okay, if I'm going to measure annually, here's my data model that I'm going to report. Now the data model has 2 things, data model and structure. Model is, bow tie. Structure is, I'm going to measure conversion rate X and call that thing a PQA and that thing an SLA and whatever, right? You're going to use all 3-letter acronym hell in order to throw that on that and in order to make that make sense for people that have, right? That's the data model. And so you work up that stack. And as you get to the top, you get to the GTM model. But you follow that sequence that I just spoke about a second ago. That was literally how you go up the hierarchy. Now, each operates with the other model. So the data
Yes.
model works with the mathematical model and works with the revenue model. And so through that concept, you can actually build and design and very much run analysis and mimic companies' behaviors moving forward. Incredibly accurate, more accurate than you can think. And we cannot predict black swans or whatever they call them, right? We cannot predict that the market collapses. We can predict it will happen, but not when it happens. But
Right.
we cannot predict that. But other than that, you can predict relatively accurately growth. Now you do this, by the way, this is important, per GTM motion, per production line. Most companies do it per company, but the company has multiple GTM motions. And so we go like, well, if we have higher accuracy, aim small, miss small, per GTM motion, then the sum of all GTM motion gives me the company revenue. So if I predict per GTM motion where it's going, it is significantly more accurate. Now, this is a key thing for you to understand. We at Winning by Design have figured the thing out. What we have done this multiple times. It failed, and not failed miserably, but we didn't get the anticipated results. That people being happy, but not what was the result. The difference was this. I can do it two ways. I can do it for you, or I can teach you how to do it so that you can do it yourself. We found that when we do it for you, it is not as successful as when we teach you how to do it and you do it yourself.
I think that makes a lot of sense because you have that investment of time and really understanding. So it's not just numbers that somebody gave me, but it's me understanding what the numbers mean and how to use that.
That is exactly right. How to build what we call a growth formula, right? Growth formula is a mathematical representation of a GTM motion of your revenue production line. It tells you how much that production line is producing, what revenue, what NRR, GR, and so on and so forth. But that is like a growth formula. We need to help you build a growth formula, not do it for you because you don't know how to use it if we do it for you. But if we help you build it and we coach you, so Lily, I'm telling you, we have to change our business ourselves. We Winning by Design. In 2021, we were doing this for customers. They were just calling us up, throwing $500,000 projects at us, right? Like that no longer works. Like nowadays, we have to help customers do it themselves. We have to train the entire executive team on how this machine works so that they all understand. Folks, you may be in marketing, but if you don't understand that you got to push some of your marketing dollars to customer marketing, this entire machine won't work, right? You got to understand that at $10, $50 million, at least 30 cents of every marketing dollar needs to go to customer marketing, not just to acquisition marketing. I'm dropping knowledge bombs down here, by the way, right? Like I'm like,
that's a really good
trying
one.
to, yeah.
I mean, 30%, that's a big part of the marketing spend. I think that probably shocks some founders to think I'm going to have to spend 30% of my marketing dollars on the existing base. And absolutely, because you've got to keep that NRR high. You've got to keep them engaged. You've got to show them a future. And if you don't, then they're going to be off looking for somewhere else. Somebody else is going to show them a future and they're going to churn.
May I ask, what's your background? What is your family? What is your grandparents? What business would they be in?
They were not entrepreneurial at all. Working for companies, for the corporate world, attorneys. Yeah.
Okay, so pick attorneys, right? So let's say that your parents, your grandparents ran an attorney business. If they would operate the business at $10 million, right? $10 million, that would be a lot of money for them, right?
Sure.
Okay. I'm telling you, I come from a small country village in the Netherlands. I mean, anyway, it's like when we went to the bigger city that I normally say that I'm from, that was actually, I came from a much smaller town. If you run a $10 million business, and the bigger city had like about 30,000 people who lived in it. If you ran a $10 million business in a city of 30,000 people,
the biggest company in town.
You're the biggest company in town. You run a factory, right? Like,
right.
Okay.
Right.
Like, we run a $10 million business and we go like, no, we're still winging it. No process is needed, right? And you go like, folks, you're understanding the scale of your business wrong, right? Just because you want to reach $1 billion doesn't mean that the way to reach that and we put that marker at $10 million, you become a factory. You need to start to act and behave like a factory. You need to have processes, right? Now, what you'll see right at $10 million, right at 8, 9, 10, $11 million, most companies, when they reach that, they're going to get, what do you think they're going to get? Give me a number to work off. What is a good funding round? That would be a B round at that point in time, maybe a C round. But I'm running at $8 to $9 million. What do you think would be a good funding round I would get at that price, at that revenue?
Depends on how much you're willing to give, but I would think, 25, 30, 50 million.
Okay, so let's go with 30. I think I love the 30 number, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to get, on January 1st, I reach $8 million. I'm going to get $30 million in funding, right? Okay. I'm the CEO. Immediately, and that was on a Friday. On Monday, help me out here, right? I know it should have already happened before, but on Monday, I got my VP of sales, my VP of marketing, VP of engineering, and they all want money, right?
Of course.
And so I got $30 million, and I'm handing money out. Who am I handing out money first? Who am I going to give the money first?
I would do marketing because you need leads coming in.
Okay, marketing is going to spend it on campaigns. Fantastic. Okay, who's the second person I'm going to give money to?
It depends on the maturity of the product, but probably sales and product.
Okay, now sales is going to hire people, right?
Yep.
Okay, and engineering is going to hire people. Okay.
Of course.
Now, $10 million. I'm not operating my business at a factory at $10 million, right? Actually, up to that point in time, everywhere during every interview, I amplified how cool we are as a company and how, how evolved we are, open door policy. And in a sense, I'm telling to everybody is like, hey, we have no processes down here. We're just a cool bunch of people doing cool stuff, right? So now I'm going to get suddenly I'm going to get that $30 million tranche. My salesperson is going to hire a bunch load of people. My head of marketing is going to launch a bunch of campaigns for which he or she needs a bunch load of people. So my company grows on average from that point in time, $8 to $10 million. I'm going to have let's say 30, 40 people, and I'm growing to 100 to 150 people. Okay, so I'm adding, let's say for dramatic effect, 100 people in the next 12 months while I have no processes. What could
things
go
are going
wrong?
to spin out of control quick.
What could go wrong? Seriously, right? and so here we are, all these companies spinning out of control. They have no manufacturing mindset. They don't understand how valid a $10 million business is and how structured you need to go about that. They're still cool. And oh, by the way, adds two aggravating effects down here. One, we live in a remote worker society. So the people are not coming into the office. So I got people, no processes, working remote. How bad could it be? Right. And so that effect clearly is taking place while my VC is telling me oh, please, you got to grow, right? I know you got to grow sustainably, but your growth trend still needs to be up and up. So I'm flaming the fires, hire more people, fire the non-performing salespeople, and I'm rotating this entire thing at that frantic pace, right? Now, I don't think that if I think of Atlassian, I think of a frantic motion, right? Canva is another success story. You look at that, you don't think, right? You look at these companies are very structured in their way they go about it, right? And so my point in time is folks, you got to think of yourself as a factory and pull yourself together and start structuring yourself.
It's so important, and having that alignment, especially as you continue to build out without having those processes. And I think about it if you've ever seen a rowing team, in a scull, all rowing together, that's true alignment, where the entrepreneurial startup is more like everybody in their own canoe paddling as hard as they can. And now we just put a bunch more canoes in the water and everybody's paddling really hard and doing their own things, but there's no alignment. And you're like, well, why are we not going anywhere? Why are we bumping into each other all the time? Because we're not in the same boat.
I love your analogy, and I definitely will use it moving forward. I want to, I'm from farmland, right? And so when you have a field of wheat or something like that, and you have a combine machine, that tractor that push, right? And then behind the combine machine, there's a machine that grabs all the grain that falls out of it, right? All the wheat that comes out of it, right? And drives it off. Yep. And so those two machines have to move synchronously, right? If the tractor pulls off too far, the grain would pour out on the ground, right?
Right.
That's what we mean with alignment, right? And what we have nowadays, we have hundreds of tractors in the field, all harvesting, right? And that field has run out of leads. And so we have these tractors right now. Now you have seen a cow patty, a cow patch where in the beginning, it's green, cows are happy. Then the grass gets dark and brown, cows are still happy. And before you know it, you're in a meat grinder and cows are just stomping around in mud scenes and being fed artificial, what do you call it? Artificial feed, right? Like we're at, and obviously in many cases we're at that end part of that cycle, right? Like, and you go like, folks, you gotta know, you gotta do better. I think that's what I'm asking of the organizations. You gotta do better. To your founders, to your CEOs, folks, we can do better. And that starts with educating your team on what we believe is revenue architecture, right? And, like obviously we work with some of the largest companies in the world. We help 1/3, many of those who are in the successful part of the public SaaS companies. And so we do a lot out there, education often free and complimentary to get everybody up to speed. But yeah, it's education. We are establishing the first hospital. We are establishing the first doctor's degree, right? Today, we are operating based on what the previous, how do you call that, sage was standing on stage, right? Like if you compare this to the Middle Ages, that is where we're at today from a GTM perspective. We have people standing on soapboxes, yelling and screaming, do what I did. Here's the lottery numbers. As Mr. Wilkinson said, here's the lottery numbers that I won the lottery with. You should try the same numbers and see if you win it, right? That's the way how we currently do it. And I believe there's a lot better way to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's finish up with AI. How are you seeing go-to-market teams build AI into their processes? And what can we learn from that? What does that future look like?
Okay, so Amy Webb the other day at Southwest gave a fantastic spiel on AI. And I encourage your audience to Google Amy Webb, double B, the end.
She's brilliant.
South by Southwest, right? She's brilliant, right? And what she did is she said, is like, hey, in 2023, I Googled I chat GPT, whatever tool she used, the picture of a CEO, right? And she got 4 males, white, middle-aged, with gray hair on the temples or something like that, right? But they all look alike, right? And, we, at that point in time, we wrote it off as like early stage, this will get fixed. She did this again, like a few months ago, and she showed it again. Same results. She then started to query with more advanced intelligence. So she said like, hey, okay, so clearly I'm not getting, like a diverse group of CEOs. So she said, can you give me the CEO of a tampon company, right? And again, male, average, white, graying at the temple, same thing. And the thing that I took away from that is well, first of all, there's many things to take away from it, but the point is, if you don't have the right process, then AI cannot do anything with it. And so we currently are training AI on the wrong processes. And as a result, right? And so my take has been, I just wrote a paper that I launched on my LinkedIn website on this, is process first, AI second. And that is, if you don't fix your processes in your company, you're going to apply AI. What you're going to get sending out more spam email written by AI. The point was, if not send out spam email in the first place, right? You should send out targeted email to the buyer with the highest propensity of buying, right? So you deploy your AI at finding the right buyer, not writing automated emails and machine gunning it the whole field. Right process first, AI second, right? That's a first step that we have to think of the maturity of our organizations. Now we go back to the previous conversations. Our processes are highly immature, and therefore we're deploying AI, and we're using a Ferrari as a lawnmower, to use a good old American saying, right? Like literally, that is the prototypical example of using a Ferrari as a lawnmower.
Yes. So how do we solve that? What should we be thinking about in getting those processes? Is it building our own process or building our own models? Or how do you see that play out?
First and foremost, you should know your process, right? Every part of your business is a process. So, and I don't want to overthink process. I don't want to be like too much of a process guru down here. And like, look, process is nothing more than 5 or 6 actions performed in the right sequence, right? Like sure. I think of a sales process. Of course, it consists of like dozens and dozens of actions, maybe hundreds of actions, email or a follow-up email, preparation, send out. Those are all actions. I'm not referring to that. I'm just think about the 5 or 6 key steps in a process. Think about that. And your entire go-to-market function is built of that, right? You need to know that. You need to know it as your business. And if you know what they are, then you can can appeal to AI and say, like, where can you help me within this process? Right. And today, that primarily is, many times I get asked, like, what do you think about the future of sales? And I go, like, 60% of salespeople will not be needed within a few years because AI will take over. And it's not a bad, like we think that, oh my God, it's a bad thing. Folks, do you know how many salespeople we have in the world? Like, it's one of the most, the biggest jobs in the world, right? But look, there was a time where the only way how I wanted to get a seat assignment was talk to my favorite lady at the airport and get my seat assignment. Nowadays, I like the app way better. I see the seat. I can check Seat Guru if it's a good seat or not, right? So I go like, it's the same thing as like, look, may I ask, and I say this jovially in many of these podcasts, it's like, were you part of the SDR strike, the group that striked when the SDRs came under threat?
Sure.
Okay. But nobody was striking with the SDRs, right?
Right.
Nobody said like, "Hey, I'm going to go on strike with SDRs." Why not? Because folks, SDRs getting on a strike is like a bunch of people who dig in a hole with a shovel going on a strike that tobacco is taking their job away, right? Right. Like, who in the world wants to do that job in the first place? Who wants to dig a deep hole of sand with manual labor? Like, nobody's going to strike against that. Today,
right.
Yeah. We have too many sales professionals in a job that doesn't require a sales professional. We have simply overhired because historically the technology was lagging behind in this field. And so now we're going to see that catch up. So we're going to continue to have fantastic trade of sales. It's going to be consisting of fantastic professionals. There's just going to be fewer of them, and they're going to be doing a better job in order to do that role, right? Today, I can ask many of you who are sales leaders, CROs, founders, and I go like, look at your sales team. I can tell you, if you have a sales team of 10, I can tell you, I've got one superstar on it. Everybody kind of like a 10 you have. You get 3 reasonable performers that you can rely on. Then you got 1 or 2 that you will welcome to the team. And then you go like the bottom 3 or 4, you go like, why do these people even work for us? Right?
Exactly.
Like, why do we pay them money?
Yeah. You see that everywhere. Every single sales team is that way.
Okay, and so of course AI is going to take those 4 people away, right? They're not going to take your superstar away. Are you kidding? Right? So that's the way to look at that from that perspective. Anyway, I'm throwing a lot of energy at you. I just had my coffee and I'm preparing for my Red Bull. So, okay, at this point, tell me a little bit. What are your key takeaways? What are you taking away from this incredible ball of energy that I am today?
I think the big ones for me is the revenue architecture and just the model, doing those things in the right order and really thinking about it. Where do you start? And doing that, the go to market, focus on one go to market motion, and ride that thing until there's nothing left in it, and then start adding some more. But don't give up on it. Don't try to diversify really early. Do the things that work, and I see that a lot, and I've done that in my own companies. And you hit a wall and you're struggling, and you go, well, why is that? And you kind of look back at the history and go, wow, that was working so good, we stopped doing it. Why did we stop? Because we had some other crazy idea that we wanted to try, and it worked so good we stopped. So I think those are some really, really good ones.
Boy, do I feel what you just mirrored what I said, right? And I have to say, I ran into the same, it's so easy to run into the same thing. We at Winning by Design had some similar experience ourselves. We had things that worked. We went away from that. We now are forced to go back, and now we go forced back. We go like, hey, those things still work. Why didn't we keep doing it that longer? Yeah,
exactly.
Somebody with a different voice entered the room, and they don't do this. Nobody does it with bad intent, right? You don't hire a VP of sales or a CRO who goes like, they do it, and they feel that okay, this is another one of those things. When a CEO hires a CRO or a CMO, they go like, okay, now do what I hired you to do for, right? And in many cases, they have to put up significant amount of revenue, right? So like all that is a big issue that we have to overcome these days.
Absolutely. And they want to make their mark. They don't want to just continue to do the same thing. They want to put their fingerprints on whatever's going on. And a lot of times that involves changes and changing things, even the things that are working, which is not necessarily healthy.
That is right. And so like if you hire a CRO or a CMO and the person says, hey, I want to go, and the CRO says, I want to go from X to Y. I want to go from medic to challenger. I want to, or something. I'm going to go from band to challenger. I want to go from consultative selling, from band to medic, or from consultative selling to challenger, right? Like the CEO says, well, I gave the person money for this. So
they must know what they're doing.
They must know what they're doing, right? And if marketing says, hey, we're going from inbound to outbound, or we're going to go launch an ABM campaign, right? Like they must know what they're doing. So in the first 6 months, they're going to get the resources, AKA people and budgets in order to do that. And that may not always be the most, that may not fall in line with what the company wants, because that person doesn't know that much yet, right? They haven't worked for the company for the past 8 years. Doesn't know what worked 3 years ago and what didn't work 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay, so in a nutshell, all this, if you structure your revenue on proper models, then then all these becomes data point in your analysis, right? That's what it is. They all just become data points that you take into account.
Yeah, data points that you can actually trust the data on, because you know how it was calculated, you know where it came from, you know how it was built. So you trust the data and make decisions.
That's right. And then we create a formula for that, right? Or we encourage you to create a formula for that. We call it a growth formula. Again, growth formula is a mathematical representation of how your production line works. And then you can perform analysis on it. You can run, you can test it out. Hey, what if my input improves? What if my throughput improves? What if my cost increases? What if my cost decreases? What if I use an AI tool to make this better? You can run that, right? You can run analysis against that. And we call that scenario analysis. You can, under this scenario, what would it happen? And now you can make educated decisions, right? Now it's not like, well, look, the gut feel experience that a 20-year veteran in sales has is an absolute must for the CEO to have on the team, right? Or a 25-year veteran who knows campaigns, right? Yeah. Their gut feeling is absolutely important. That is where you aim the data for. You go like, look, I'm trusting your gut feeling, and that's why I'm going to look for the data in that field, that specific area first. But the data may give a different signal, right? Or the data may often show the causality is different. The VP of sales often is right about these things, right? I've seen it again and again. They're not wrong about it, but they also have a tendency to be wrong on the cause of it. They know what the outcome is. They know not to do that, but often they are so tactically involved over those many years that they lost the sight on cause. What caused this? That means that if you look at causality analysis, you can often come back and say they were not wrong. They actually were very right, but it should be applied in this field. And I give you a practical example. Practical example is if I tell a CEO, is like, hey, we've closed 3 banks, right? Like, or I'll give you a practical example. I've used this in the past. I'm selling elevators for people who have a wheelchair, right? And I go like, oh my gosh, we've been selling to banks. We should be selling to more banks because we've been selling to banks over the years. Now, the VP of sales closed 3 banks, closed Wells Fargo, PNC, whatever, at Swiss Credit Suisse, right?
Sure.
We must be good in the financial sector. So wheelchair people, financial sector, that's where we should sell more to financial sector. And then we come to the conclusion that the financial sector, the reason why we sell there is because they are government mandated, and the government mandates that there's wheelchair access for people. So it's not financial banks that we sell to. We should sell to the departments, to companies who are under a federal restriction to put wheelchair ramps in there, right?
That makes sense.
Well, that is a good read by the VP of sales, but further causality analysis showed, it's the federal government's mandate that is instructing and is directing. That is an example of gut feel right in the right direction. Causality shows a different cause.
That's super, super valuable. Well, where can people learn more about you and about Winning by Design online?
Well, thank you for asking that. First of all, the book is the number one thing. Amazon, just Google revenue architecture, and my name, Jacco, Jacco. Revenue architecture should pop it up. We just launched it, but think we have over 2,000 books sold. Like books in our segment don't sell that much, right? I don't want you to think like, oh my gosh, they're like, this is $1 million New York bestseller, right? Revenue architecture is a starting thing. So you can find it on Amazon. Number two, our website, winningbydesign.com, will help you with all that. I think that, and on YouTube, we have so much videos on YouTube, instruction videos. We are very open in order to share our content. Anybody that is running into this, attend one of our workshops. We do frequently workshops all across the world. Like we're in China, we're in Australia, we're in Latin America, we're in North America, and obviously we're in Europe. Berlin is one of our hot spots these days. So we're all across the world, and we'll constantly do these workshops. So always feel free, online, remote, in person, whatever it is, to join those sessions.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link that in the show notes. Jacco, it's so great to have you on the show today. Very insightful. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thank you all for all your listeners out there who've undergone this, this assault of energy. And I know that sometimes I'm sorry, I am that kind of person. I'm so ADD.
Love it.
Working. So I apologize. I know myself well, but thank you for being with us for this long. And thank you for looking me up out there. Thank you for having the opportunity to talk to you as well.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Jacco, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and insights. I love the breadth and depth of your experience. Well, you can learn more about Jacco and Winning by Design at winningbydesign.com. And be sure to check out his latest book, Revenue Architecture. It's really, really good. And just came out on Audible like a month ago on my birthday. So very cool, right? It's great stuff. And pick that up. And what's really cool is within it, it's got like an accompanying PDF with lots of graphs and things. All the stuff that's in the book is in the audiobook too. So grab that. It is a fantastic book. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check it out on YouTube as well. Thought leaders share. I bet you're one. Share this episode with someone who could use a burst of speed in their sales cycle. And hey, everyone who shares this week gets a DeLorean Deal Accelerator. Strap into this virtual ride and watch your sales process fly by. With every contract signed, your screen lights up with fire trails because winning new revenue should always feel like a cinematic experience. Join us next Tuesday, where our founder is Clay Sharman, founder and CEO of Cradio.ai. He'll be sharing how his AI-driven platform is transforming prospect engagement and bridging gaps between technology and customer needs. And next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we have Bradley Hamner, founder of Blueprint OS. We'll talk about the transition from working in your business to strategically working on it. It's one of those phrases we probably all heard, but we'll actually get into how to do it. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.